Community language learning is developed by Charles Curran. He was born on March 30, 1934 in New York, United States. Charles Curran is a specialist in counseling and a professor of psychology at Loyola University in Chicago. His application of psychological counseling techniques to learning is known as counseling learning. The term counseling means one person giving advice, assistance, and support to another who has a problem. Community language learning represents the use of counseling to teach languages. Within the language teaching tradition, CLL is sometimes cited as an example of humanistic approach. CLL procedures and those bilingual education, particularly the set of bilingual procedures referred as language alteration or code switching. According to Curran, there are 6 factors which are essentials to non-defensive whole-person learning process. The first one is the security. Second is attention. The third one is self-assertion and aggression. Fourth is reflection. Fifth is retention, and the last one is discrimination.
A counselor helps a client understand his own problems better by capturing the essence of client's concern. Here are some definitions of community language learning. It is a language teaching method where students work together to develop what aspects of a language they would like to learn. It is based on a counseling approach where a teacher acts as a counselor and a paraphraser, while a learner is seen as a client and a collaborator. It emphasizes the sense of community in the learning group, encourages interaction as a vehicle of learning, and considers as a priority the students' feelings and the recognition of struggles in language acquisition. There is no syllabus or textbook to follow, and it is a student's role to determine the content of a lesson by means of meaningful conversation. It is an approach in which students and teacher work together to develop the aspects of a language they would like to learn. The teacher acts as a counselor, where the learner acts as a kind patient being guided through established stages of development. The nature of community language learning. Students are to be considered as learner-clients and the teacher is a teacher-counselor. A relationship of mutual trust and support is considered essential to the learning process. Students are permitted to use their native language and are provided with translations from the teacher, which they then attempt to apply. Grammar and vocabulary are taught inductively. Chunks of target language produced by the students are recorded and later listened to. They are also transcribed with native language equivalents to become texts the students work with. The lesson is presented in their native language. Students ask questions using native language, but teachers answer in target language. Mistakes will be corrected by repeating.
5 stages of development. In the first, birth stage, feeling of security and belonging are established. In the second, as learner's ability improve the learner, as child begins to achieve a measure of independence from the parent. With the third, the learner speaks independently and may need to assert his or her own identity, often rejected and ask for advice. The fourth stage sees the learner as secure enough to take criticism. By the last stage, the learner merely works upon improving style and knowledge of linguistic appropriateness. By the end of the process, the child has become adult. The learner knows everything the teacher does and can become knower of a new learner. The process of learning a new language then is like being reborn and developing a new persona, with all the trials and challenges that are associated with birth and maturation, insofar as language learning is thought to develop through creating social relationships. Success in language learning follows from a successful relationship between learner and teacher, and learner and learner. Learning is viewed as a unified personal and social experience. The learner is no longer seen as learning in isolation and in competition with others. Aspects. A group of ideas concerning the psychological requirements for successful learning are collected under the acronym SIDE. S stands for security. Unless learners feel secure, they will find it difficult to enter into a successful learning experience. A stands for attention and aggression. CLL recognizes that a loss of attention should be taken as an indication of the learner's lack of involvement in learning. The implication being that variety in the choice of learning tasks will increase attention and therefore promote learning. Aggression applies to the way in which a child, having learned something, seeks an opportunity to show his or her strength by taking over and demonstrating what has been learned, using the new knowledge as a tool for self-assertion. R stands for retention and reflection. If the whole person is involved in the learning process, what is retained is internalized and become a part of learner's new persona in the foreign language. Reflection is concisely identified period of silence within the framework of the lesson for the student to focus in the learning forces of the last hour, to assess his present stage of development, and to re-evaluate future goals. This stands for denotes discrimination. When learners have retained a body of material, they are ready to sort it out and see how one thing relates to another. This discrimination process becomes more refined and ultimately enables the students to use the language for purposes of communication outside the classroom. This central aspect of Quran's learning philosophy addresses not the psycholinguistic and cognitive processes involved in second language acquisition, but rather the personal commitments that learners need to make before language acquisition process can operate. CLL learning theory hence stands in marked contrast to linguistically or psycholinguistically based learned theories, such as those informing audiolingualism or the natural approach design.
Community language learning combines innovative learning tasks and activities with conventional ones. They include: first, translation. The teacher translates what the student tries to say and the student repeats it. Second is group work. Students work with groups and complete a task that will be presented to the teacher and the rest of the class. Next is recording. Students record conversation in the target language. Next is transcription. Students transcribe conversation they have recorded. Next is analysis. Students analyze transcriptions of target language in order to use them. Next is listening. Students listen to the teacher and then the involved elements they might have elicited. Last is free conversation. The students are ready to speak with the teacher or other student. So there are rules in community language learning. The first is teacher. Initially likened to that of nurturing parent. He or she operates in a supportive role. Teacher also monitors learner utterances, providing assistance when requested. So The second one is students. They're the one who listen to the teacher attentively, become counselors of other learners, repeat target utterances without hesitation.
And now, let's move on to the advantages and disadvantages of community language learning. First is the student's independence. Learners appreciate the autonomy that CLL offers them and thrive on analyzing their own conversations. Second, there is no intimidation. And third is creative thinking. Also, CLL works especially well with lower levels who are struggling to produce spoken English. And lastly, the class often becomes a real community. Students become much more aware of their peers, their strengths and weaknesses, and their willingness to work as a team. There is no grammar explanation. The teacher operates without conventional materials. Syllabus is not designed yet. And some learners find it difficult to speak on tape, while others might find that the conversation lacks spontaneity.